She woke to the scent of old books and beeswax candles, neither of which she remembered ever smelling before, which was strange, considering she couldn't remember smelling anything at all. The ceiling above her was painted with constellations that didn't match any sky she knew, though how she knew that when she didn't know her own name remained a mystery wrapped inside the larger mystery of waking in a bed that wasn't hers, in a room she'd never seen, wearing a nightgown of silk so fine it felt like water against her skin. Her head ached. Not the sharp pain of injury, but the hollow ache of absence, like someone had carefully removed pieces of her mind and left only the empty spaces where memories should have lived. She sat up slowly, her body protesting in ways that suggested recent trauma, though she found no visible wounds. The room around her was beautiful in the way old things are beautiful, full of character and secrets. Dark wood furniture carved with intricate patterns, velvet curtains the color of midnight. A fireplace large enough to stand in, though no fire burned there now. Through the tall windows, she could see grounds that stretched into darkness, manicured gardens disappearing into a forest that looked like it had teeth. The door opened without a knock. He entered the way shadows enter a room, inevitable and silent, tall with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes the color of winter storms. He wore black, elegant and severe, and carried himself with the careful control of someone who'd forgotten how to be anything but controlled. He stopped when he saw her sitting up, something flickering across his face too quickly to name. Relief, perhaps, or fear. "You're awake," he said, his voice like velvet over steel. "I wasn't certain you would be." She stared at him, her mind grasping for recognition and finding nothing. "Who are you?" The question came out steadier than she felt. "Where am I?" "My name is Lucian Darkhollow," he replied, not moving closer. "You're in my home, Darkhollow Manor. You've been unconscious for 3 days. 3 days. She repeated the words, testing them. They meant nothing. Everything meant nothing. "Why can't I remember anything?" Lucian's expression didn't change, but his hands tightened almost imperceptibly at his sides. "You were attacked, left for dead in the forest beyond my gates. I found you and brought you here." "Attacked by what?" "Whom?" he corrected gently. "And that is a conversation for when you're stronger." She wanted to argue, but her body had other ideas. Exhaustion pulled at her like an undertow. Still, she forced herself to stay upright, to meet his eyes directly. "You said your name. What's mine?" Something in his face shifted, softened, just fractionally. "I was hoping you would remember that yourself. You carried nothing to identify you. No papers, no belongings, just the clothes on your back and injuries that should have killed you. But they didn't. No." His voice was quiet. "They didn't. Which raises questions I'm not yet prepared to answer." The way he said it made her skin prickle. Not with fear, exactly. With recognition of danger acknowledged, but not threatening. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing exactly how far the fall would be. "Are you going to hurt me?" she asked. Lucian's eyes widened fractionally, genuine surprise crossing his features. "No," he said, and it sounded like a vow. "No, I'm going to keep you safe, which is why you cannot leave." The words hung between them like a sword on a thread. She should have been afraid. Every instinct should have been screaming at her to run, to fight, to do anything but sit calmly in this strange bed while a strange man told her she was a prisoner. But instead, she felt something else. Curiosity, trust, impossible and inexplicable, and beneath it all, the bone-deep certainty that Lucian Darkhollow, whatever else he might be, was not her enemy. "Cannot," she repeated. "Or may not?" "Both." He moved then, finally, crossing to the window to look out at his shadowed grounds. "There are things hunting you." Things that won't stop simply because you've forgotten who you are. Until I understand what you are and why they want you dead, you're safer here, behind my wards, under my protection. What I am. The phrase snagged on something in her mind. I'm human, aren't I? Lucian turned back to face her, and in the dim light from the windows, his eyes caught the moonlight strangely, reflected it back like an animal's eyes, or something else entirely. That, he said softly, is one of the questions. Understanding came slowly, like dawn through thick fog. The too graceful way he moved, the predatory stillness, the casual mention of wards and things that hunted in the dark. You're a vampire. It wasn't a question. Yes, no apology, no explanation, just acknowledgement. She should have screamed, should have tried to run, should have done anything except what she did, which was study him with the same curiosity he'd been showing her. Have you fed from me? She asked. No. His voice was firm, almost offended. I don't feed from the helpless. I found you dying, and I saved you, because that's what one does when they find someone dying. Your blood is your own. The certainty in his voice eased something she hadn't known was tight in her chest. She believed him. God help her. She believed him. So I'm a prisoner for my own protection, in the home of a vampire who saved my life, but won't tell me who I am. She laughed, though it came out more bitter than amused. This is insane. Yes, Lucian agreed. It is, which is why you should rest, regain your strength, and let me handle the complications. What if I don't want to rest? He smiled then, just slightly. It transformed his face, made him look younger, more human. Then I suspect you'll be a very difficult guest. A knock at the door interrupted whatever she might have said next. Lucian's posture shifted instantly, protective and alert. Come in, he called. The door opened to reveal a child. A little girl, no more than 6 or 7, with dark curls and enormous eyes the same storm gray as Lucian's. She wore a nightgown similar to the one she herself was wearing, and carried a tray nearly as large as she was, loaded with tea and what looked like soup. The child moved with careful concentration, her small face scrunched in determination, as she navigated the heavy tray across the room. Lucian moved immediately, his supernatural speed making him a blur, catching the tray just as it began to tilt dangerously. Elara, he said, and his voice was entirely different now. Warm. Gentle. Everything that had been cold control moments before melted into something that looked almost like love. What did we discuss about carrying things too heavy for you? The little girl, Elara, looked up at him with absolutely no fear. That I should ask for help, she recited dutifully. But you were talking to the lady, and I didn't want to interrupt, and Mrs. Hemsworth said the lady would need food when she woke up, and I wanted to be the one to bring it, because I've been waiting for days and days for her to wake up, and you never let me visit, and I wanted to see if she was pretty, and she is. She's very pretty. Even prettier than the portrait in the East Gallery, though that lady has much fancier hair. She said all of this in one breath, her words tumbling over each other like water over stones. When she finished, she beamed at them both, utterly pleased with herself. Something in the woman's chest cracked open. This child, this bright, fearless creature, looked at the vampire with complete trust. Loved him, obviously, and entirely. And the way Lucian looked at Elara, the way his whole demeanor transformed in her presence, told a story louder than words ever could. Hello, Elara, she said softly, finding herself smiling despite everything. Thank you for bringing me food. That was very thoughtful. Elara's attention swiveled to her immediately, those huge eyes studying her with unnerving intensity. You talk nice, she announced. Like music. Do you sing? Can you remember if you sing? Uncle Lucian says you can't remember anything, not even your name, which is terribly sad because names are important. I asked if we could give you a new name, but he said that wasn't proper. that you'd remember your own name when you were ready, but I think if I couldn't remember my name, I'd want someone to give me one, even if it was temporary. May I give you a temporary name? The woman glanced at Lucien, who was watching this exchange with something that might have been amusement, softening his severe features. He offered no help, simply raised an eyebrow as if to say, "You're on your own." "I suppose that would be all right," she agreed. "What name did you have in mind?" Alara tapped her chin thoughtfully, a gesture so adult on such a young face that it was almost comical. "You look like a morning person, like sunshine in a garden. So I think we should call you Aurora. It means dawn." "Aurora," she repeated, testing the name. It didn't spark any memories, but it felt right nonetheless. Better than being called the lady, or her, or you. "I like it. Thank you, Alara." The child positively glowed. She turned to Lucien triumphantly. "See? She likes it. I told you I'm good at names. Remember when I named the barn cat Sir Whiskerton the Magnificent? And everyone said it was a perfect name?" "I remember," Lucien said, setting the tray on a table near the bed. "You have a gift for dramatics." "You say that like it's a bad thing," Alara replied primly. She climbed onto the end of the bed without asking permission, settling herself cross-legged and studying Aurora with that same unnerving intensity. "Uncle Lucien says you were hurt very badly. Does it still hurt?" Aurora considered the question, taking stock of her body. The hollow ache in her head, yes. The deep exhaustion, certainly. But actual pain? "Not really," she admitted. "I'm mostly just tired. And confused." "Being confused is better than being hurt," Alara said with the certainty of someone who knew the difference. "I was confused when I first came here, too. I didn't understand why my mama and papa weren't coming back. Uncle Lucien explained that sometimes people go away and don't come back, not because they want to, but because they can't. That death is like that. Forever and can't." Her small voice wavered on the last word, and Lucien moved closer, his hand coming to rest gently on her dark curls. The gesture was protective, comforting. Aurora felt something tighten in her throat watching them. "I'm sorry about your parents," she said softly. Alara nodded solemnly. "It was 2 years ago. I'm better now. Uncle Lucien takes care of me, and Mrs. Hemsworth makes good food, and the library has 1,000 books, and there's a garden with a swing, and sometimes Uncle Lucien reads to me even though he says the stories are silly." "They are silly," Lucien interjected mildly. "Last week's story involved a princess who defeated a dragon with nothing but a lemon and a stern lecture. And it worked." Alara protested. "The dragon apologized and became her friend and helped her build a castle made of clouds." "Highly impractical," Lucien observed, but his eyes were warm. Aurora watched this exchange, this easy affection between the vampire and the child, and felt pieces of understanding click into place. Whatever else Lucien Darkhollow might be, whatever danger he represented to the world outside these walls, he was this little girl's guardian, her protector, her family. And from the way Alara looked at him, he was doing a good job of it. "How long have you lived here, Alara?" Aurora asked. 2 years and 4 months and 16 days, Alara replied immediately. "Uncle Lucien came and got me after the accident. He said I was family, that his brother married my mama, and that meant I was his responsibility now. He carried me all the way here, even though I cried the whole time, because I didn't want to leave. But then when we got here there was hot chocolate, and Mrs. Hemsworth gave me the biggest bedroom, and Uncle Lucien let me pick any name I wanted for my room. And I chose the Starlight Chamber, because the ceiling has paintings of stars just like this room. And I thought maybe we were in the same place as the stars at night." She paused for breath, then added, "Do you like hot chocolate?" "I don't know," Aurora admitted, "but it sounds like I should." "You should," Alara confirmed seriously. "It's very important. I'll have Mrs. Hemsworth make you some tomorrow. Tonight you should eat the soup because you've been asleep for 3 days and Uncle Lucien was very worried even though he pretended not to be. But I could tell because he kept checking on you every hour, and he only does that when he's worried, like when I had the fever last winter, and he sat by my bed for 3 whole nights without sleeping, even though vampires are supposed to sleep during the day, and he was very tired, but he stayed anyway. Aurora's gaze shifted to Lucien, who was suddenly very interested in adjusting the curtains. A flush of color touched his pale cheeks, barely visible in the dim light. "Elara," he said, his voice carrying a warning. "You were worried," the child insisted. "It's okay to be worried. You tell me it's okay when I worry about things." The soup was warm and rich, some kind of vegetable broth that tasted like comfort in a bowl. Aurora ate slowly, aware of 2 pairs of eyes watching her every move. Elara with open curiosity, Lucien with something more complicated. Concern, yes, but also calculation. As if he were trying to solve a puzzle written in her features. "You're staring," Aurora said after the silence stretched too long. "Am I?" Lucien replied, though he didn't look away. "Forgive me. It's been some time since I've had a house guest who wasn't a 6-year-old whirlwind of questions and energy." "I resent that," Elara announced. "I'm 7 now. I had a birthday last month. We had cake with 17 candles because Uncle Lucien got confused about how many to buy, and I told him it was fine, that more candles meant more wishes." "And did your wishes come true?" Aurora asked. Elara's expression grew thoughtful. "One of them did. I wished for you to wake up. I saw you the first night, when Uncle Lucien brought you in. You were sleeping so still, like a princess in a story, and I wished very hard that you would wake up and be okay. And now you are." Something in Aurora's chest constricted. This child had been wishing for her recovery, a complete stranger, with the earnest faith of someone who still believed wishes mattered. "Thank you for wishing for me," she said quietly. "Of course," Elara replied, as if there had never been any question. "You looked sad even while sleeping. Nobody should be sad while sleeping. That's when you're supposed to rest." Out of the mouths of children, Aurora thought. Such simple wisdom delivered with such certainty. She finished the soup under their watchful gazes, the warmth of it spreading through her body and easing some of the exhaustion. When she set the bowl aside, Elara immediately launched into another stream of conversation. This time about the manor itself, the library with its rolling ladders and hidden reading nooks, the conservatory where flowers bloomed year-round despite the eternal winter outside, the music room where a piano sat under dust covers because nobody played anymore, the portrait gallery where paintings of Lucien's family stared down with varying degrees of severity. "There's one of a lady who looks a little like you," Elara confided. "Same eyes, I think. Uncle Lucien stood in front of it for a very long time when you first arrived. I asked him why, and he said sometimes paintings remember things people forget." Aurora's gaze snapped to Lucien. "Is that true? Do I look like someone you knew?" He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps," he finally said. "Memory is a complicated thing. Sometimes we see what we want to see rather than what's actually there." End quote. It wasn't an answer. Not really. But before Aurora could press further, a bell chimed somewhere deep in the manor. Lucien's head turned sharply toward the sound, his entire body going tense. "That's the ward alarm," he said quietly. "Elara, take Aurora to your room. Stay there until I come for you." The change in him was instantaneous. The gentle guardian disappeared, replaced by something ancient and dangerous. Elara scrambled off the bed immediately, fear flashing across her small face before she mastered it with visible effort. "Is it them again?" she asked, her voice smaller than before. "Likely." Lucien was already moving toward the door. "Do as I say. Both of you. Do not open the door for anyone but me. Do you understand?" "Yes, Uncle Lucien," Elara whispered. He paused at the threshold, looking back at them. His eyes found Aurora's, and in them she saw a promise written in shadow and storm. "I will keep you safe," he said. "Both of you. I swear it." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a finality that made Aurora's heart race. Alara grabbed her hand, her small fingers surprisingly strong. "We have to go now," she said urgently. "When Uncle Lucian uses his scary voice, we listen." Aurora let herself be pulled from the bed, her legs unsteady beneath her. The nightgown swirled around her ankles as Alara tugged her toward a different door, one she hadn't noticed before, half hidden behind a tapestry. "Secret passages?" Aurora managed. "The manor is full of them," Alara replied, pushing the door open to reveal a narrow corridor lit by dim amber lights. "Uncle Lucian showed me all of them. He said every old house has secrets, and it's better to know them than not know them." They hurried through the passage, Alara navigating with the confidence of long familiarity. Aurora's mind spun with questions. Who was at the gates? What did they want, and why did Lucian look so worried about it? The passage opened into another room. This one clearly Alara's domain. The walls were painted soft lavender, and stars had been painstakingly added to the ceiling in gold leaf, creating the night sky Alara had mentioned. Books were stacked in precarious towers, beside an enormous bed piled high with pillows and blankets. Drawings covered every available surface, childish renderings of gardens and animals and people. Alara locked the door behind them with a heavy bolt that seemed excessive for a child's bedroom. Then she turned to Aurora, her young face serious beyond her years. "You don't have to be scared," she said. "Uncle Lucian always wins. He's very strong and very old, and he loves us. So he'll keep us safe. He promised." Aurora knelt down to meet the child's eyes. "You're very brave, Alara." "I have to be," Alara replied simply. "Uncle Lucian says being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing the right thing anyway. Right now, the right thing is waiting here and trusting him." Such wisdom from someone so small. Aurora wondered what this child had seen in her short life to teach her such lessons. What she'd survived to end up in the care of a vampire, in a manor full of secrets. They settled on the bed together, Alara pulling a blanket around both their shoulders. Through the walls, Aurora could hear distant sounds. Shouts, maybe. Or the wind. Or something else entirely. Alara nestled against her side, warm and trusting, and Aurora found her arm going around the child automatically. Protective. Instinctive. "Tell me a story," Alara asked quietly. "Something happy." Aurora's mind scrambled. She had no memories, no stories from her past to draw on. But then, words came anyway, flowing from someplace deeper than memory. A tale about a garden where every flower sang a different song, and a little girl who learned to conduct them, like an orchestra. Alara listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions or adding details of her own, and for a little while, in that lavender room with painted stars overhead, they could almost forget there was danger waiting beyond the walls. They waited for what felt like hours, but was probably only one. Alara eventually dozed against Aurora's shoulder, her breathing evening out into the soft rhythm of sleep. Aurora held her carefully, this small warm weight, and wondered why it felt so natural, why protecting this child she'd known for less than an hour felt as essential as breathing. The door opened without warning. Aurora's heart lurched, her arms tightening around Alara automatically. But it was Lucian who entered, looking tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. His dark clothing was dusty, but intact, no signs of injury visible. Alara stirred, blinking up at him sleepily. "Did you win?" she asked. "Always," Lucian replied, but his voice was heavy. He crossed to them, kneeling beside the bed, so he was eye level with Alara. "Go back to sleep, little one. Everything's handled for now." "Promise?" Alara's small hand reached for his, Promise. He squeezed her fingers gently. I need to speak with Aurora for a moment, then I'll return to check on you. Alara nodded, already drifting back towards sleep. Aurora carefully extracted herself, tucking the blanket around the child, before following Lucien out into the corridor. He led her back through the secret passage, but instead of returning to her room, he took a different turn, descending a spiral staircase that opened into a study. The room was all dark wood and leather, shelves packed with books in languages she couldn't name. A fire burned in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across walls hung with maps of places that no longer existed. Lucien poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter, offering her one. You don't have to drink it, he said, but you might want to. Aurora accepted the glass, sinking into one of the leather chairs. The liquor burned pleasantly, warming her from the inside. Lucien remained standing, staring into the fire, as if it held answers to questions he hadn't yet asked. Who were they? Aurora finally asked. Hunters, Lucien replied. A particularly persistent group, who've been tracking you since before I found you. They believe you're something dangerous, something that needs to be eliminated. Am I? The question hung between them. Lucien turned to face her, his storm-gray eyes reflecting firelight. I don't know what you are, he admitted, but I know you're not what they think you are. They're looking for a weapon. When I look at you, I see someone who calmed a frightened child with nothing but kindness. Someone who trusted a vampire's word when every instinct should have told you to run. Someone who, even without memories, has more humanity than most humans I've met. Aurora absorbed this, turning the glass in her hands. You said I should have died from my injuries. What did you mean? Lucien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Your wounds were mortal. Catastrophic. I found you in the forest with your throat torn open, your chest crushed, your body broken in ways that should have killed you instantly. I brought you here not to save you, but to give you a peaceful place to die. Except you didn't die. By the next morning, your wounds had closed, not healed exactly. Closed as if they'd never been mortal at all. Within 3 days, every injury was gone. Not even scars remained. Aurora's hand went to her throat automatically. The skin there was smooth, unblemished. That's not possible. No, Lucien agreed. It's not. Not for humans, not even for most supernatural creatures, which is why the hunters want you, and why I won't let them have you. Whatever you are, you deserve the chance to understand it yourself before others weaponize it. You could have turned me over to them, Aurora said slowly. Why didn't you? Lucien's expression was complicated, layers of emotion shifting across his features like clouds across the moon. Because you reminded me of someone I failed to protect long ago. Because Alara looked at you with hope, and that child has known too little hope in her short life. Because I'm tired of death and destruction, and for once I wanted to choose life instead. He paused, then added quietly. And because when I touched you to check for signs of life, something in your unconscious mind reached back. Not magic, exactly. Something else. Recognition, perhaps. As if some part of you knew me, trusted me, even in the depths of dying. Aurora felt that statement settle into her bones. It explained the inexplicable trust she'd felt upon waking, the certainty that Lucien, vampire or not, meant her no harm. Did you know me before? She asked. In another life, maybe? I don't believe in reincarnation, Lucien said, but I've lived long enough to stop being surprised by impossible things. He crossed to a shelf, pulling down a leather-bound book. When he opened it, Aurora saw it was a journal, the pages filled with elegant handwriting. I've kept records for centuries, he said. Notes on every strange occurrence, every supernatural anomaly I've encountered. Your rapid healing matches nothing in my experience. But there are legends, old stories about beings who could recover from any injury, who were essentially unkillable. They were called phoenixes, reborn from destruction, stronger each time. You think I'm a phoenix? Aurora's voice was skeptical. I think you're something the world has forgotten existed, Lucian replied, and that makes you valuable, dangerous, and very, very vulnerable to those who would exploit you. Aurora stood, pacing to the window. Outside, the grounds were quiet again, peaceful, under starlight, but she could see scorch marks on the grass, evidence of whatever confrontation had occurred. How long can you protect me here? She asked. Lucian's reflection appeared in the glass beside hers. As long as necessary. My wards are ancient and strong. They won't breach them easily. But eventually, they'll find a way, or bring enough force to overwhelm even my defenses. We need to understand what you are and why they want you before that happens. And how do we do that? We start with what you can do, Lucian said. Tomorrow, when you're rested, we'll run some tests. See if we can trigger your abilities consciously, rather than just in response to injury. If you're truly what I suspect, you're not just a healer. You're something much more significant. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Aurora lay in the enormous bed, staring at painted constellations and trying to make sense of everything. She was apparently unkillable, had no memory of who she'd been before, and was trapped in a vampire's manor, while hunters waited outside for their chance to capture or kill her. It should have terrified her. Instead, she felt strangely calm, as if this were exactly where she was supposed to be. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through the heavy curtains. Aurora rose and found fresh clothes laid out on the chair beside her bed. Simple but well made, soft trousers, and a flowing shirt in deep green. They fit perfectly, which raised questions she wasn't ready to examine. A knock at the door preceded Mrs. Hemsworth's entrance. The housekeeper was a sturdy woman with iron-gray hair and warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "Good morning, dear," she said, her voice carrying the comfortable authority of someone who'd been running this household for decades. "Master Lucien asked me to bring you breakfast and show you around the manor. He's dealing with some business, but will find you in the conservatory within the hour." Breakfast was warm bread with butter and honey, fresh fruit that shouldn't have been available in winter, and tea that tasted like summer gardens. Aurora ate while Mrs. Hemsworth chatted about the manor, her voice a soothing background to the morning. "The master is a good man," Mrs. Hemsworth said as she cleared the dishes. "Don't let the vampire business frighten you. I've been with this family for 40 years, since I was a young woman, and I've never felt unsafe. He's protective of his own, fierce about it, really. That little Ilara has brought light back into this house. And now you're here, and perhaps that's another piece falling into place." "You're not afraid of him?" Aurora asked. Mrs. Hemsworth laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Afraid of Master Lucien? Lord, no. I'm more likely to scold him for tracking mud through my clean floors than fear him. He's dangerous to his enemies, certainly. But to those under his protection, he'd burn the world down before letting harm reach them." The words settled into Aurora's understanding of Lucien Darkhollow, adding layers to the complicated man who'd saved her life. The conservatory took her breath away. Glass walls arched overhead, creating a cathedral of light and green. Plants from every climate imaginable grew in controlled profusion, carefully tended and thriving despite the winter cold outside. Roses climbed trellises beside tropical orchids. Ferns unfurled next to desert succulents. The air was warm and humid, smelling of earth and growth. Ilara was already there, dirt on her hands and a smudge across her cheek, carefully repotting a small plant. She looked up when Aurora entered, her face lighting with immediate joy. "Aurora. Look, I'm helping the ferns move to bigger homes. Mrs. Hemsworth says they were getting cramped. They look happy about it," Aurora observed, kneeling beside the child. You're very gentle with them. Plants are like people, Elara said seriously. They need care and attention and someone to notice when they're struggling. Uncle Lucian taught me that. He says a garden is a responsibility, that when you take something under your protection, you commit to its well-being. Aurora helped Elara finish repotting the ferns, their conversation flowing easily. The child talked about her lessons, about learning to read and write and do mathematics, about how Uncle Lucian was teaching her about stars and history and the proper way to address nobility, though Elara couldn't imagine why she'd ever need to know such things. Do you miss your parents? Aurora asked gently. Elara's hands stilled in the soil. Every day, she said quietly. But it's a different kind of missing now. At first it hurt like being cut, sharp and terrible. Now it's more like an ache that's always there, but doesn't stop me from being happy too. Uncle Lucian says grief is like that. It doesn't go away, but it changes shape, becomes something you can carry. Wise beyond her years, this child. Aurora wondered if tragedy always aged people this way, stripping away innocence, but replacing it with hard-won understanding. Lucian found them an hour later, covered in potting soil and laughing over Elara's story about a particularly stubborn rose bush that refused to bloom until she'd sung to it every day for a month. He stood in the doorway watching them, something soft in his expression that vanished the moment he realized Aurora had noticed. Elara, he said. Mrs. Hemsworth needs your help selecting fabrics for new curtains in the East Wing. Something about your excellent eye for color. Elara jumped up immediately, brushing soil from her dress. She's going to let me choose? Really choose? Within reason, Lucian replied, amusement coloring his voice. Try to restrain your enthusiasm for purple. Purple is a dignified color, Elara informed him primly. She gave Aurora a quick hug before dashing off, leaving the two adults alone among the flowers. Lucian offered his hand to help Aurora up. His skin was cool, but not cold, his grip careful. She's wonderful, Aurora said. She is, Lucian agreed. More resilient than she should have to be. More forgiving than I deserve. Why do you say that? Because I'm what I am, Lucian replied. A creature of darkness raising a human child. Some would call it unnatural, dangerous. Aurora thought about the gentle way he'd held Elara's hand, the patience in his voice when he explained things, the careful consideration he showed for her happiness. I think she's lucky to have you. Lucian looked at her with surprise, as if the thought had never occurred to him. You're kind to say so. I'm honest, Aurora corrected. There's a difference. He smiled then, just slightly. Yes, I'm learning that about you. Come, I want to show you something. He led her deeper into the conservatory, to a section she hadn't explored. Here, the plants grew wild, less cultivated. A small pool reflected light from above, water lilies floating on its surface. Surrounding it were flowers Aurora didn't recognize, their petals iridescent, shifting colors in the light. These are moonflowers, Lucian explained. They grow only in places touched by old magic. I've cultivated them for centuries, studying their properties. They respond to supernatural energy, blooming brighter in its presence. As he spoke, the flowers began to glow more intensely. Aurora stepped closer, mesmerized. When she reached out to touch one, the flower seemed to lean into her hand, its light pulsing in time with her heartbeat. The moonflower's glow intensified under Aurora's touch, spreading from petal to stem until the entire plant radiated light, like a small star captured in leaves. She pulled her hand back instinctively, but the glow remained, pulsing gently. Interesting, Lucian murmured, his gaze fixed on the flower. They've never responded like that before, not even to me. What does it mean? Aurora asked, staring at her hand as if it had betrayed her. It means you have power, Lucian replied. Significant power, dormant or suppressed. The moonflowers are responding to something in you, something ancient and strong. He moved to another plant, this one with leaves that shimmered like silver. Try this one. Touch it gently and see what happens. Aurora hesitated, then extended her hand. The moment her fingers brushed the silver leaves, they began to chime. A soft musical sound like distant bells. The sound spread through the plant, each leaf adding its voice to the chorus until the entire conservatory seemed to sing. Lucian's expression was intense, calculating. You're a conduit, he said. These plants respond to supernatural energy, but they require it to be pure, untainted. Dark magic withers them. Corrupt power sickens them, but your touch makes them thrive, which tells me whatever you are, you're fundamentally aligned with life, with growth, with healing. You said I was a phoenix, Aurora said, pulling her hand back. The chiming faded slowly, reluctantly. Is that what this is? Possibly. Lucian began pacing, his mind clearly working through possibilities. Phoenixes are legendary healers, creatures of rebirth and renewal. They don't just heal themselves, they can heal others, restore life to dying things, purify corruption. If you're truly one of them, you're one of the rarest beings in existence. Most were hunted to extinction centuries ago, killed for their power, or enslaved for their healing abilities. The weight of his words settled over Aurora like a shroud. That's why the hunters want me. They want to use me. Or dissect you to understand how your power works, Lucian said bluntly. Or kill you to prevent anyone else from having access to your abilities. Hunters are rarely motivated by altruism. They serve the highest bidder, and someone has paid them very well to find you. Aurora sank onto a stone bench beside the pool, her mind reeling. I don't feel powerful. I feel lost and confused and completely ordinary. Lucian sat beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits, patient and quiet, until it's needed most. Your body knew to heal itself when you were dying. Perhaps your mind simply needs to remember how to access what your instincts already know. How do I do that? We practice, Lucian said, carefully, with controls in place, if you're willing to try. Aurora looked at him, this vampire, who'd saved her life and protected her without asking for anything in return, who cared for an orphan child with patience and love, who looked at her not as a weapon or a resource, but as a person worth protecting. I'm willing, she said. Good. Lucian stood, offering his hand again. Then let's begin with something small. There's a rose bush in the East Garden that's been dying despite our best efforts. Mrs. Hemsworth has tried everything, but it continues to wither. Let's see if your touch can save it. They walked through the manor together, Elara's laughter echoing from somewhere above as she debated fabric choices with Mrs. Hemsworth. The sound made Aurora smile, warmth spreading through her chest. She's happy here, Aurora observed. She is now, Lucian replied. The first months were difficult. She grieved deeply, had nightmares every night. I wasn't prepared for it. Didn't know how to comfort a child who'd lost everything. But we learned together. She taught me how to be gentle again, and I taught her that safety could exist even in darkness. They emerged into a walled garden where winter had stripped most plants to bare bones. But in the center stood a rose bush, its branches gray and brittle, only a few brown leaves clinging to its thorns. It looked like death waiting to be acknowledged. This was my brother's rose, Lucian said quietly. He planted it the year he married Elara's mother. When he died, I transplanted it here, thinking I could preserve it. But it's been dying ever since, and I don't know how to save it." The pain in his voice was subtle, but real. This wasn't just a plant. It was a memory, a connection to family lost. Aurora knelt beside the rose bush, studying its withered form. Without thinking, she placed both hands on its trunk, feeling the rough bark beneath her palms. Immediately, something sparked beneath her skin. Not pain, but awareness. She could feel the rose's struggle, its slow surrender to death. Could sense where water no longer flowed, where roots had given up, seeking sustenance. And beneath that, faint but persistent, she felt a tiny spark of life still fighting. "Hold on," she whispered to the plant. "I see you. I've got you." Heat built in her palms, spreading up her arms. The world seemed to narrow, focusing down to just her and the dying rose. She could feel her own heartbeat synchronizing with that faint spark, her own life force reaching out to kindle the failing ember. Light bloomed beneath her hands, soft and golden. The rose bush shuddered, then began to change. Gray bark flushed with color. Brown leaves sprouted green. Thorns that had been brittle hardened into sharp points. And then, impossibly, buds formed along the branches, swelling and opening into perfect white roses that should never have bloomed in winter. Aurora gasped, pulling her hands back. The rose bush stood transformed, healthy and vibrant, its white flowers releasing a fragrance that filled the garden with sweetness. She swayed, sudden exhaustion washing over her. Lucian caught her before she could fall, his arms strong and steady. "Easy," he murmured. "You gave too much too quickly. Your body needs to learn its limits." Aurora leaned against him, too tired to protest. "Did I really do that?" "You did." Lucian's voice held wonder. "You brought it back from the edge of death. That's not just healing. That's resurrection." They stayed there for a moment, Aurora catching her breath while Lucian supported her weight. When she finally felt steady enough to stand on her own, she noticed his expression had changed. Gone was the wonder, replaced by concern. "What's wrong?" she asked. "This confirms what you are," Lucian said. "And it makes you even more valuable than I feared. Aurora, if word gets out about what you can do, every power in the supernatural world will want you. To control you, to use you, to possess you. We need to be very, very careful." Over the following days, Aurora learned to control her gift under Lucian's careful guidance. They worked in secret, in the conservatory where the plants could benefit from her practice. She healed withered flowers, revived dying ferns, even coaxed a supposedly dead olive tree back to vibrant life. Each time she felt the pull of energy, the giving of herself to restore others, and each time she understood a little more about what she was. Alara became her constant companion during rest periods, chattering endlessly about her lessons and her dreams, and the stories she was writing about brave girls and their adventures. The child had a vivid imagination and a generous heart, often including Aurora in her tales as a mysterious sorceress with healing hands. "You're not so mysterious," Alara announced one afternoon as they painted in her room. "You're just Aurora. And you make sad things happy again, which is the best kind of magic." If only it were that simple. Aurora was beginning to remember fragments. Nothing concrete, just flashes. A laboratory. People in white coats. Pain. Tests. Screaming. The memories came in dreams, waking her in the night with her heart racing and fear coating her tongue. Lucian always seemed to know. He would appear at her door within moments, never entering without permission, but always there. "The nightmares?" he would ask, and she would nod, too shaken to speak. Sometimes he would sit in the chair by her door and talk to her, his voice low and soothing, telling her about the history of the manor or the stars visible through her window. Other times he would simply sit in silence, a presence steady and protective, until her breathing calmed and sleep became possible again. One night the memories were worse than usual. Aurora woke screaming, power surging through her uncontrolled. The painted stars on her ceiling blazed to life, actual light emanating from the artwork. The flowers in the vase beside her bed erupted into bloom, so violent they shattered the glass. Lucian burst through the door, Alara right behind him despite the hour. The child took one look at Aurora's face, tear-streaked and terrified, and climbed onto the bed without hesitation. "It's okay," Alara said, wrapping her small arms around Aurora. "You're safe. We're here. Nothing can hurt you." The simple certainty in the child's voice cut through Aurora's panic. She held Alara close, focusing on the solid warmth of her, the steady beat of her heart. Gradually, the light faded from the ceiling. The flowers stopped their frenzied blooming. "I remembered something," Aurora said shakily, looking at Lucian over Alara's dark curls. "They were experimenting on me, trying to understand my healing ability. There were others like me, I think, but I can't remember their faces, just the pain and the fear. And someone saying that if they could replicate my gift, they could weaponize immortality." Lucian's expression went cold, dangerous. "Who were they?" "I don't know. I can't see their faces clearly. But I think I escaped. I think that's why I was in the forest, dying. I think they tried to kill me to prevent me from telling anyone what they'd done." The pieces were falling into place now, a horrible picture emerging. Someone had captured her, studied her, tortured her in the name of science or profit or power. And when she'd tried to escape, they'd sent hunters to finish what their experiments had started. "They won't stop looking for you," Lucian said quietly. "Not if they're that invested." "I know." Aurora's arms tightened around Alara. "Which is why I need to leave. I'm putting you both in danger by being here. If they breach your wards, if they come in force, Alara could be hurt. I can't allow that." "No." Alara pulled back to look at Aurora fiercely. "You can't leave. This is your home now. Uncle Lucian said so. He promised you'd be safe here, and Uncle Lucian never breaks his promises." "Alara's right," Lucian said. "You're not leaving. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," Aurora protested. "As long as I'm here, you're both targets. Then we make ourselves harder targets." Lucian's voice was firm, allowing no argument. "I've survived centuries by being smart and prepared. We'll increase the wards, call in favors from allies, and if necessary, we'll fight. But I'm not sending you out there alone to die. That's not how this family works." Family. The word struck Aurora like a physical blow. When had she become part of this strange little family? This vampire and his orphaned ward, and their loyal housekeeper? "I can't ask you to risk yourselves for me," she said. "You're not asking," Lucian replied. "I'm choosing. We're choosing. Right, Alara?" "Right." Alara nodded emphatically. "You're ours now. We take care of our own. That's what Uncle Lucian taught me." Aurora looked between them, this fierce child and this ancient vampire, both looking at her with absolute certainty. And something in her chest that had been frozen since she woke, with no memories, began to thaw. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, we face this together." Alara hugged her again, and over the child's head, Aurora met Lucian's eyes. In them she saw promise and determination, and something else, something that made her heart skip. "Thank you," she mouthed. He nodded, just once. Then he stood. "It's very late. Alara, back to bed. Aurora needs rest, and so do you." Alara grumbled but obeyed, giving Aurora one final squeeze before allowing Lucian to shepherd her back to her own room. When he returned, he paused in Aurora's doorway. "The nightmares will continue," he said gently. "Your mind is trying to process trauma, while protecting you from remembering too much too fast. It's normal. But you don't have to face them alone. Call for me if you need to. Day or night, I'll come." "Won't I be disturbing your rest?" Aurora asked. Lucian's smile was slight, but genuine. "I haven't rested easily in decades. A little company during the dark hours would be welcome. Winter deepened around Dark Hollow Manor, but inside, warmth grew. Aurora settled into rhythms of daily life, her abilities growing stronger and more controlled with each passing day. She helped Mrs. Hemsworth in the kitchen, learning recipes she couldn't remember ever knowing, but somehow understanding instinctively. She read to Alara from the extensive library, losing herself in stories about heroes and magic and impossible things. And she spent hours in Lucian's study, the two of them researching Phoenix legends and ancient texts, trying to understand the full extent of what she might be capable of. The hunters tested the wards periodically, probing for weaknesses. Lucian reinforced them each time, his magic woven through the estate like an invisible web of protection. But they both knew it was only a matter of time before a more serious assault came. One evening, as snow fell thick outside the windows, Lucian called Aurora to his study. He looked troubled, a letter in his hand written on paper that seemed to shimmer with its own light. "I've received a summons," he said without preamble. "The Vampire Council wants to meet with me. They've heard rumors of a phoenix in my protection and want to verify the truth." "What will you tell them?" Aurora asked, fear curling in her stomach. "The truth," Lucian replied, "that you're under my protection and will remain so. But I need you to understand what this means. The Council is powerful, ancient. If they decide you're a threat, or if they decide they want to control you themselves, my protection may not be enough." "Then don't go," Aurora said. "Ignore the summons." "I can't. To ignore the Council is to invite war, and I won't risk Alara or you in open conflict with them. No. I'll go. I'll make my case. And I'll return with their agreement to leave you in peace." He said it with such confidence, but Aurora could see the worry beneath. What if they don't agree? Lucian was quiet for a long moment. "Then I'll have decisions to make about which laws I'm willing to break and which consequences I'm willing to face." The weight of what he was offering struck Aurora fully. He would defy the ruling body of his own people for her, would risk everything he'd built, all for a woman he'd known for mere weeks. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why risk so much for me?" Lucian set down the letter, his storm-gray eyes meeting hers directly. "Because in 300 years, I've met very few people worth protecting. You're one of them. Alara is another, and I've learned that the things worth protecting are also worth fighting for, no matter the cost." He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the snow-covered grounds. "I failed my brother. I was away when he needed me, consumed with council politics and power games. By the time I returned, he and his wife were dead, and Alara was alone. I swore I would never fail like that again, never let duty or fear keep me from protecting the people I care about." Aurora joined him at the window, close enough to feel the cold radiating from the glass. "You haven't failed, Alara. She loves you. She's happy and safe and thriving." "Because I chose her over everything else," Lucian said. "Over council approval, over social standing, over the expectations of vampire society. The moment I brought a human child into my home, I became an outsider in my own world. But I'd make the same choice 1,000 times, because she matters more than their approval ever could." He turned to Aurora, and in the dim light, his face was open in a way she'd never seen before. Vulnerable. Honest. "You matter too, Aurora, more than you probably realize. You've brought something back to this house that I thought was lost forever. Hope. Joy. The possibility that broken things can heal and broken people can be made whole again. I'm not going to surrender that to the Council or anyone else." Aurora felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of what they might do, of what I might be, of remembering everything and discovering I'm someone terrible." "You're not terrible," Lucian said with absolute certainty. I've seen terrible in every form it takes. You're brave and kind, and stronger than you know. Whatever you were before, whoever you were, the person you are now is good. Hold on to that. On impulse, Aurora reached for his hand. His fingers closed around hers, cool but gentle. They stood together in the quiet study, snow falling beyond the windows, and for a moment, the danger waiting outside seemed very far away. The moment was broken by rapid footsteps in the hall. Elara burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement. Uncle Lucien. Aurora. Come quick. The moonflowers in the conservatory are doing something amazing. They followed her through the manor, Elara practically bouncing with energy. In the conservatory, the moonflowers Aurora had touched weeks ago were blooming in earnest now, their petals opening to reveal centers that glowed like captured starlight. But that wasn't what made them amazing. The flowers were singing, not the chiming of the silver leaves, but actual harmonious notes that rose and fell in complex patterns, a chorus of flower song filling the glass-walled room with music that seemed to resonate in Aurora's very bones. They've been doing this for an hour, Elara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. I thought you should see. Aurora approached the flowers slowly. When she got close, their song intensified, becoming more joyful, more complex. She reached out, and the moment her fingers touched a petal, images flooded her mind. Not memories of her own life, but something else. Ancient knowledge, passed down through generations of phoenixes. She saw others like her, healers and guardians who'd lived in harmony with nature, who'd used their gifts to restore balance and protect the vulnerable. She saw the fall of their kind, hunted and destroyed by those who feared their power. And she saw hope, a promise that as long as even one phoenix survived, the possibility of rebirth remained. The visions faded, leaving Aurora breathless. Lucien steadied her as she swayed, his hands on her shoulders. What did you see? He asked urgently. The history of my people, Aurora replied, her voice distant. We weren't just healers. We were guardians, protectors of natural order. When darkness threatened to overwhelm the world, phoenixes would rise to restore balance. We were never meant to be weapons or tools. We were meant to be bridges between life and death, between destruction and renewal. Elara tugged on her sleeve. That sounds very important. It is, Aurora agreed, kneeling to meet the child's eyes. And it means I have to be brave. Like you taught. Understanding dawned on Lucien's face. You're going with me to the council. Yes. Aurora stood, her decision made. If they want to meet the Phoenix, they should meet her directly. Not hear about her secondhand. Not make decisions about her future without her voice in the room. It's dangerous, Lucien warned. They could try to imprison you, use you. They could try, Aurora agreed. But I'm done hiding. I'm done being afraid. If I'm truly meant to be a guardian, then I need to start acting like one. And that means standing up for myself, and for others like me, who might still be suffering in those laboratories. Lucien looked at her with something like pride. You're certain? Completely. She turned to Elara. I need you to stay here with Mrs. Hemsworth. Keep the manor safe while we're gone. Elara's face crumpled. But I want to come. I want to help. You will help, Aurora assured her, by being brave and safe and making sure we have a home to return to. Can you do that for me? Elara nodded reluctantly, throwing her arms around Aurora in a fierce hug. Promise you'll come back. Both of you. We promise, Lucien and Aurora said in unison. 2 days later, they stood before the doors of the council chamber. The building was ancient, carved from a single piece of black stone that seemed to absorb light. Runes glowed along its surface, wards and protections layered over centuries. Aurora wore a dress of deep crimson that Lucien had provided, elegant and formal. Her hair was pinned back, revealing her face fully. She looked like a queen preparing for battle, regal and resolute. Lucian, beside her in his formal blacks and the silver insignia of his bloodline, looked every inch the ancient noble he was. But his hand found hers, squeezing once before the doors opened. "Together," he murmured. "Together," Aurora agreed. The council chamber was circular, with 7 thrones arranged around a central platform. 6 were occupied by vampires so old they barely looked human anymore, their features sharp and predatory, their eyes glowing with power that made Aurora's skin crawl. The 7th throne was empty. Lucian Darkhollow, the central vampire, spoke, his voice like grinding stone. "You were summoned alone. Why do you bring the Phoenix before us?" "Because she is not a pet or possession to be discussed in her absence," Lucian replied coolly. "She is a person with agency and voice, and if you wish to know about her, you should hear from her directly." The council members exchanged glances, communication passing between them in ways Aurora couldn't perceive. Finally, the central vampire gestured to Aurora. "Speak then, Phoenix. Tell us what you are and why we should not claim you for the good of all vampire kind." Aurora stepped forward onto the platform, refusing to show fear even as 6 predatory gazes fixed on her. "My name is Aurora," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I don't remember everything about my past, but I know I was captured and experimented on by people who wanted to weaponize my healing abilities. I escaped, nearly died, and was saved by Lucian Darkhollow, who asked nothing in return except that I be allowed to heal and discover who I am. I'm not a weapon. I'm not a resource to be exploited. I'm a guardian, meant to protect and restore, and I choose to do so freely, not under anyone's control." "Pretty words," another council member said, "a woman with eyes like chips of ice, but your power makes you dangerous. Uncontrolled, you could upset the balance of power across all supernatural territories. The prudent course would be to bind you, limit your abilities until we can be certain you won't become a threat." "Bind me?" Aurora's anger flared. "Like they did in the laboratory? Lock me away and use me when convenient? I'd rather die." "That can be arranged," the ice-eyed vampire said coldly. Lucian moved to stand beside Aurora, his posture protective. "You'll have to go through me first." "Don't be foolish, Darkhollow," the central vampire warned. "You're one of us. Don't throw away centuries of standing for a creature you've known mere weeks." "I'm throwing away nothing," Lucian replied. "I'm choosing honor over convenience, something this council used to value before it became consumed with power and control." The chamber erupted in argument, council members talking over each other. But through the chaos, Aurora felt something shift, the moonflower knowledge stirring inside her, responding to the threat. Her hands began to glow, soft golden light emanating from her palms. The arguing stopped, all eyes fixed on her as the light grew brighter. "You want to know what I am?" Aurora said quietly. "I'll show you." She released the power she'd been carefully controlling, letting it flow outward in waves. The light spread through the chamber, touching each council member, and where it touched, she could feel them. Their ages, their pain, their ancient wounds that even immortality couldn't heal. The loneliness of living centuries while everyone they'd loved turned to dust. The emptiness of power without purpose. The fear that they'd become the very monsters humans believed them to be. "I see you," Aurora said, "all of you. And I could heal you. Could ease the pain you carry, restore the humanity you've lost, piece by piece over the centuries. But I won't do it under compulsion. I won't be your tool. If you want my help, you'll have to ask for it, as equals, with respect. The light faded. Aurora swayed, exhausted but triumphant. The council members sat in stunned silence. Finally, the central vampire spoke, his voice different now. Softer. "You touched my grief," he said wonderingly. "Showed me my daughter's face again. I haven't been able to remember her smile in 300 years, but for a moment I saw it clearly. How did you do that?" "Because healing isn't just physical," Aurora replied. "It's emotional, spiritual, and everyone here is wounded, whether they admit it or not. I can help, but only if you let me choose how and when and for whom. My gift isn't yours to command." The council chamber remained silent for a long moment after Aurora's declaration. Then, unexpectedly, the ice-eyed vampire laughed. It was a rusty sound, as if she hadn't laughed in decades, which was probably true. "Remarkable," she said. "You stand before the most powerful vampires in existence and lecture us on respect. Either you're incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." "Can't I be both?" Aurora replied. That drew another laugh, this time from multiple council members. The tension in the room shifted, not disappearing entirely, but easing from immediate hostility to cautious curiosity. The central vampire, who Aurora had learned was called Matthias, leaned forward. "Tell me, Phoenix, if we were to agree to your terms, to accept you as a free agent rather than a controlled asset, what would you do with your freedom?" Aurora considered the question carefully. "I would continue learning about my abilities. I would help those who need healing, whether vampire or human or other, and I would hunt down the people who imprisoned others like me, who tried to turn healers into weapons. I would make sure no one else suffers what I suffered." "A noble goal," Matthias observed, "and one that would require resources, allies, information, things the council could provide if we were to form an alliance rather than a hierarchy." "I'm listening," Aurora said cautiously. "We propose a compact," Matthias continued. "You remain free, under Lucian's protection as you have been. In exchange, you agree to provide healing services to the council and our allies when asked, not commanded. You would be compensated appropriately, and would have the right to refuse any request you find objectionable. Additionally, we would provide resources to help you locate and shut down the organization that held you captive." It was more than Aurora had dared hope for. She glanced at Lucian, who gave a nearly imperceptible nod. "And what guarantee do I have that you'll honor these terms?" she asked. "That you won't try to control me the moment I prove useful?" Matthias stood, moving to the empty seventh throne. He placed his hand on it, and runes flared to life along its surface. "This throne has been empty for 50 years, since the last independent guardian chose to work with the council rather than against it. We offer it to you now. A seat at this table, a voice in our decisions, and the protection that comes with council membership. Not as our subordinate, but as our equal." Aurora stared at the throne, her mind reeling. "You're offering me a position on the Vampire Council? I'm not even a vampire." "No," the ice-eyed vampire agreed, "but our laws state that the seventh seat belongs to a guardian of balance. For centuries we've struggled to fill it, because true guardians are so rare. But you are exactly what that seat was created for. Someone to remind us of our responsibilities to the wider world, to temper our power with compassion." Lucian's hand found Aurora's again, squeezing gently. It was support, not pressure. The choice was entirely hers. Aurora thought of Elara, waiting at the manor with such trust. Of Mrs. Hemsworth's warm kitchen and painted stars on bedroom ceilings. Of the life she'd begun building in the shadow of Dark Hollow Manor. Of the victims still trapped in laboratories, suffering as she had suffered. "I accept," she said. on the condition that my first act as a council member is to authorize a full investigation into the organization that imprisoned me, with resources dedicated to freeing anyone still held captive and bringing the perpetrators to justice." "Agreed," Matthias said immediately. "I'll personally oversee the investigation." Aurora climbed the steps to the seventh throne and sat. The moment she did, the runes blazed brighter, recognizing her as their rightful occupant. Power flowed through the throne into her, not controlling, but connecting. She could feel the other council members now, their ancient strength and their carefully hidden vulnerabilities. "Welcome to the council, Aurora Phoenix-born," Matthias said formally. "May your wisdom guide us toward better choices than we've made in the past." The other council members echoed the sentiment, even the ice-eyed vampire, who Aurora learned was named Seraphine. As the formal ceremony concluded, and the council began discussing practical matters of the investigation, Aurora caught Lucian's eye. He looked proud, relieved, and something else. Something that made her heart beat faster. The meeting lasted another 2 hours as they planned strategy and allocated resources. When it finally ended, and Aurora and Lucian stepped back out into the night, she felt the weight of what she'd taken on settling across her shoulders. "A council member," she said wonderingly. "I went from having no memory to having political power in one of the supernatural world's most important organizations. That's not overwhelming at all." Lucian laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "You'll be magnificent. You were made for this, Aurora, for standing between darkness and light, for advocating for those who can't advocate for themselves." They began the journey back to Dark Hollow Manor, traveling through the winter night. The wards around the estate glowed in welcome as they approached, recognizing them both. Inside, they found Alara asleep on the couch in the library, clearly having tried to wait up for them. A book lay open across her chest. Lucian lifted the child gently, carrying her to her room while Aurora watched with a soft smile. When he returned, he found Aurora standing by the window in his study, looking out at the moonlit grounds. "She was so worried," Aurora said. "I could tell from how tightly she was clutching that book. We matter to her." "We do," Lucian agreed, joining her at the window. "And she matters to us, which is why what you did tonight was so important. You secured not just your own safety, but hers as well. The Council's protection extends to all of us now." Aurora turned to face him, and the words she'd been holding back for weeks finally spilled out. "I don't know who I was before. Maybe I never will. But I know who I am now. I'm someone who found a home in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected people. And I'm grateful for it. For you. For taking a chance on a dying stranger in the forest." Lucian's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle. "You were never just a stranger, Aurora. From the moment I found you, something in me recognized something in you. A kindred spirit, perhaps. Someone else who'd been broken and was trying to piece themselves back together. Someone worth saving, worth protecting, worth caring for." "Worth loving?" Aurora asked, her voice barely a whisper. Lucian's eyes darkened, emotion swirling in their depths. "Dangerously worth loving," he admitted. "Though I've been trying not to. You've been through so much, deserve time to heal, without the complication of my feelings. But yes, Aurora, worth loving more than I thought possible." The truth hung between them, precious and fragile. Aurora stepped closer, her hand coming to rest over his heart. Even through his shirt, she could feel the slow, steady beat, different from a human's rhythm, but no less real. "You're not a complication," she said softly. "You're the one thing in my life that makes complete sense. Everything else is confusion and questions and missing pieces, but this, us, feels right, like coming home to a place I didn't know I was missing." Lucian's other hand found her waist, drawing her closer. "I'm a vampire, Aurora. I'll outlive you by centuries unless something kills me. Loving me means accepting that eventually you'll leave me behind. I've buried everyone I've ever cared for. I don't want to add you to that list. Then don't, Aurora replied. I'm a phoenix. Remember? We don't die easily. We heal, we adapt, we're reborn from destruction. Maybe my lifespan is longer than either of us realizes. And even if it's not, wouldn't you rather have whatever time we get than waste it being afraid of the ending? She was right, and Lucian knew it. He'd spent 3 centuries being careful, holding himself apart, protecting his heart from more loss. But Aurora had slipped past every defense without even trying. Simply by being kind and brave and impossibly, wonderfully alive. When you put it that way, he murmured, I seem rather foolish for resisting. You're forgiven, Aurora said with a smile. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she rose on her toes and kissed him. For a moment, Lucian went still, surprised. Then he responded, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her close as he returned the kiss with 3 centuries of loneliness, finally finding an outlet. It was gentle and careful, neither of them wanting to rush, both savoring the moment they'd been dancing around for weeks. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. That was inadvisable, he said, though he was smiling. Probably inappropriate. Definitely complicated. All the best things are, Aurora replied. A small voice from the doorway made them both jump apart. I knew it. Elara stood there in her nightgown, grinning triumphantly. I told Mrs. Hemsworth you were in love. She said I was being fanciful. But I was right. Lucian cleared his throat, looking flustered in a way Aurora had never seen before. Elara, what are you doing awake? I heard you come back, Elara said, padding into the room. I wanted to make sure Aurora was okay. And she is. Better than okay. She's happy. The child looked between them, her smile widening. So does this mean Aurora is staying forever? And we're a real family now? Aurora and Lucian exchanged glances, the question hanging between them. Then, Aurora knelt down to Elara's level. Would you like that? She asked. If I stayed? If we were a family? More than anything, Elara said earnestly. You make Uncle Lucian smile more. And you make me feel like I have a mama again, even though you're not my real mama. You're like a chosen mama, which Mrs. Hemsworth says is just as good, maybe even better because you picked each other. Tears pricked Aurora's eyes. Then yes, she said, pulling Elara into a hug. I'm staying, and we're a family. The most unusual family in existence? Maybe, but ours. Elara squealed with delight, hugging Aurora tightly before launching herself at Lucian, who caught her with practiced ease. We're a family, she announced to the room at large. A vampire and a phoenix and a girl, and we're going to have adventures and protect each other and be happy. Ambitious goals, Lucian observed, but his eyes were warm. Though I believe we can manage them. He looked at Aurora over Elara's head, and in his gaze she saw promise and future, and the kind of love that transcended logic or reason. They were an impossible family, built from tragedy and chance and choices made in the face of danger. But they were theirs, and that made them perfect. 3 months later, Aurora stood in the council chamber again, presenting her findings from the investigation. They'd found the laboratory, shut it down, and freed 17 other phoenixes who'd been held captive. Some had been there for years. Some were barely holding on to life. Aurora had healed them all, one by one, pouring her power into restoring what had been stolen. The organization behind it had been dismantled, its leaders facing justice. But the work wasn't finished. There were other victims, other laboratories, other people who needed saving. It would take time, resources, and dedication. Fortunately, Aurora had all 3. She'd also discovered something wonderful. Her lifespan, according to ancient texts Matthias had unearthed, was measured in millennia rather than decades. Phoenixes aged slowly, their bodies constantly renewing themselves. She would have centuries with Lucian after all. At Dark Hollow Manor, life had settled into new rhythms. Alara attended school now, both mundane lessons with Mrs. Hemsworth and magical training with Lucian and Aurora. She was learning to read auras, to sense supernatural energy, to protect herself. She wanted to be a guardian too someday, she'd announced, helping people like Aurora did. Aurora's responsibilities took her away sometimes, traveling to heal the sick or investigate reports of supernatural abuse. But she always came home to Dark Hollow Manor, to Lucian waiting in his study or working in the conservatory, to Alara with new drawings to show and stories to share. The moonflowers still sang when Aurora tended them, their music filling the glass-walled room with joy. The rosebush Lucian's brother had planted thrived now, producing blooms year-round, and Aurora had started her own garden, planting seeds that would grow into a living memorial for the phoenixes who hadn't survived captivity. Each plant a life remembered, honored, and mourned. One evening, as autumn painted the grounds in gold and crimson, Aurora found Lucian in the conservatory. He was reading to Alara, the child curled against his side, as he described the adventures of a very determined princess and her equally determined dragon. Aurora stood in the doorway, watching them, her heart full to bursting. This was what she'd been meant for, not just healing bodies, but healing hearts, building families from broken pieces, creating light in places that had known only darkness. Lucian looked up, meeting her eyes across the room. He smiled, that private expression reserved just for her, and patted the space beside him. Aurora crossed to them, settling on his other side. Alara immediately grabbed her hand, linking them together. "Aurora," the child said, "tell us about the new phoenixes. Are they getting better?" "They are," Aurora confirmed. "Every day a little stronger. They're learning to use their gifts again, learning to trust. It's slow work, but they're healing." "Good," Alara said firmly. "Everyone deserves to heal. Everyone deserves to be happy." "Wise words," Lucian observed. "Yes," Aurora agreed, squeezing both their hands. "Everyone deserves to heal. Everyone deserves to be loved. And everyone deserves a second chance at life." She'd had hers, waking in a strange manner with no memory but endless possibilities. And she'd found more than she'd ever dared hope for. A purpose, a family, a love that defied death and time and every reasonable objection. The painted stars on distant ceilings glowed softly in their memories. The moonflowers sang their eternal songs. And in Dark Hollow Manor, 3 unlikely souls had found exactly what they needed in each other. Aurora Phoenix-born, guardian and healer. Lucian Darkhollow, ancient and devoted. And Alara, the bright thread connecting them. The hope that kept them reaching toward tomorrow. Together, they were whole. Together, they were home. Together, they were exactly where they were meant to be.